very good evening, Eswatini. This is Eswatini TV News Bulletin 8, read to you by myself, Notile Sitole. First up, here's a look at tonight's headlines. Their Majesties have sent a message of sympathy to President Cyril Ramaphosa, the KwaZulu-Natal monarch and nation on the passing of King Eswatini. The Minister of Commerce says 2 factory shells will be built at Gamula and Mandambe respectively. The Minister of Tinkhundla officiated the sword-cutting ceremony at the sites where Gilgal and Gilongo constituencies will be built. And now our bulletin in detail. On behalf of His Majesty King Eswatini III, Her Majesty the Queen Mother, the government and the people of Eswatini, the acting Prime Minister Themba Masuku has sent a message of sympathy to President Cyril Ramaphosa, the KwaZulu-Natal monarch and nation, and the entire people of South Africa on learning about the passing of His Majesty King Goodwill Zwelithini Gapeki Zulu, King of the Zulu nation. Masuku says His Majesty the King was devoted to his people, serving with distinction. His wisdom and love for people was an inspiration and extended beyond the borders of South Africa. The acting Prime Minister says the monarch shared a special bond with Eswatini and remained a true friend. Hence, Eswatini is equally at loss for this very sad eventuality. Masuku says it is Eswatini's hope and prayer that the Almighty God will comfort the KwaZulu monarch and nation, the government and the entire people of South Africa during this tragic period of mourning in the Zulu nation. The Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry, Manqoba Khumalo, says the 2 factory shells will be built at Gamula area and Mandambe area. The minister said this when the ministry appeared before the Ministry's House of Assembly Portfolio Committee to present the 2020-2021 financial report.
Gamula is under Gilongo constituency, while Mandambe is under Shisolweni 1 constituency. When presenting the 2021-2022 budget speech in Parliament, Minister Neil Rickenberg said 100 million emalangeni has been allocated for the factory shells. Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry, Manqoba Khumalo, elaborates on the importance of these factory shells.
Economic recovery strategy and the inputs that have been made by Eswatini through the Poverty Participation Assessment Study. This will include, amongst others, the decentralization of factory shells to destitute areas. Ladies and gentlemen, I am happy that part of our capital request this financial year includes the construction of factory shell programs in the following areas: Egwaiweni, Royal Crow, Mabataneni, Royal Crow, and Matendwa Royal Crow.
Members of the Portfolio Committee applauded the ministry for allocating the factory shells in rural areas, saying this will discourage urban migration.
Nagesi bangasakhona nokuthi philise besingacela ukuthi kube nebhili lebuya nabakhomethi le-address that kusema-cooperatives angakuyo.
Siyabonga ke lokuthi siyayibona i-trade hub inhle kakhulu, sibonile sebangenile nabomake.
The minister mentioned that partnership between government and junior achievement has yielded positive results as 51 schools have been involved in cooperative concept. In the period under review, cooperatives have saved above 1.3 billion emalangeni, while they have asset value above 2.7 billion emalangeni. For Eswatini TV News, Fortune Dlangamandla, Parliament.
The Minister of Health, Tinkhundla, says the ministry has already prepared a registration form and an app which will be used by health workers and members of the public in registering for vaccination against COVID-19. The minister says the registration forms will be availed in health facilities in the country.
The Kingdom of Eswatini received its first batch of AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines on Thursday. With the first consignment of vaccines having arrived in the Kingdom, the Minister of Health, Tinkhundla, says the Ministry of Health has already kick-started a registration exercise for health workers and members of the public who will want to register for vaccination.
So 70 tempilo seticalile vele tiyabhalisa kune app leyakhiwe ukuthi ungabhalisa ecingweni lakho isho ukuthi wena abantu uready ku vaccinate kula kuleti 70 tempilo sifuna ke bese uyasho ukuthi usebentela ngakuphi.
The minister says health workers have already started registering for vaccination. She says an app has already been created for registration, and health workers registering through this app will be required to state the health facility they are attached to. Meanwhile, the Minister of Health expressed full confidence in the effectiveness of the AstraZeneca vaccine in the fight against COVID-19.
Sekubonakele ke eNgilandi sebajove 15 million webantu ngaye AstraZeneca. Sekubonakele sikulabo bantu labo noma angawuthola kwanomkhuhlane kude lo lesibhedlela kuze kube namhla kulo 15 million.
The minister says in the United Kingdom, 15 million people have received an AstraZeneca jab, with studies showing that from these people, not one of them has experienced severe COVID-19 symptoms after taking the vaccine. The minister says Eswatini people should understand that all medication, including other vaccines apart from the COVID-19 vaccine, come with a certain degree of side effects in the body. Eswatini is expecting a consignment of 12,000 more vaccines which will be delivered in the country tomorrow. For Eswatini TV News, Tinkhundla with Tinkhundla in Matapa.
The Minister for Tinkhundla Administration and Development, David Ngampalala, has officiated a sword-cutting ceremony for the construction of 2 Tinkhundla centers at Gilgal and Gilongo constituencies, respectively. The minister started at Gilgal, where 1 hectare of land has been allocated, and proceeded to Gilongo, where 4,000 square meters of land has been allocated.
Gilgal constituency is amongst new constituencies in the country that does not have a permanent structure. It is using a borrowed structure where Gilongo constituency, despite being around for a long time, has never had a constituency structure and has been renting the premises it operates from. The Ministry of Tinkhundla Administration and Development saw the need for these constituencies to have their structures. On Friday, the Minister of Tinkhundla, David Ngampalala, officiated a sword-cutting ceremony where he expressed his gratitude to the chiefs for allocating land for the constituencies.
Tinkhundla yengwenyama bekunene vele sijabule kakhulu silitiko kwethu sekuphuma siyawuhlwaya ukuthi imali itholakala kanjani.
Elections and Boundaries Commission Commissioner Chief Mawandla Gamete, who spoke on behalf of the chairman of EBC, Prince Mhlaphlangene, said it pleases the commission to see the construction of these constituencies commence.
Ngisho ukuthi sijimisele kakhulu ukubambisana nemimango, ukubambisana nebantu. Kubonakala ukuthi abantu bathuthuka kanjani etinkhundleni tabo. Nekwekuthi ke beme kanjani ngoba
Gilgal Member of Parliament Sandla Fagute expressed his gratitude to the ministry. He also thanked chiefs of the constituencies for allocating them a 1 hectare land.
Ngiyabonga Honorable Minister ukuthi sekunengile singakhomba lokwentuthuko lesibenako la enkundleni yaseGilgal ngekusithwa nguwe nama officials akho.
Gilongo Member of Parliament Timothy Miyeni says it is a relief to see the sword-cutting ceremony because the people will now have access to government services. Miyeni says they have been allocated land that is within reach for all people of the constituency.
Namhlala usinikeza isiqiniseko sekuthi nembala lokufika kwalesakhiwo senkundla enkundleni yasenkilongo kutawusenda ukuthi imisebenzi labe ibucayi kanye nakhashane nathi setawusonzela nyalo ibe kubantu bebayidzinga kakhulu nje obubona la.
Chiefs of the 2 constituencies said they allocated the constituencies land where the constituencies will be at the center of the people. Reporting for Eswatini TV News is Tembeli Hlemakuchwa with Temba Shabangu Lubombo.
The Ministry of Tourism and Environmental Affairs could not exhaust its 82.4 million emalangeni budget allocation for the financial year of 2020-2021 as it used only 52.4 million emalangeni of the allocated funds. The ministry's under expenditure was announced in Parliament by Minister Moses Vilakazi when presenting the ministry's annual performance report to members of the ministry's portfolio committee, whereupon he requested approval of the ministry's financial budget for 2021-2022.
The Ministry of Tourism and Environment was allocated a budget of 82 million emalangeni, 450,588 in the financial year of 2020-2021. Yet, out of its entire allocation, the ministry only used 52.4 million emalangeni, resulting in a multi-million under expenditure of allocated finances. Minister Moses Vilakazi attributes this under expenditure primarily to the outbreak of COVID-19, which he says disrupted Eswatini's entire tourism and environment sectors.
Also, Mr. Chair, 16,800,000 was allocated for capital funding of 3 capital projects this financial year, which were as follows. The sum of 10,800,000 was allocated for the project on rehabilitation of national parks, while 4 million was allocated for the augmentation of meteorological observations and installation of thunderstorm detection equipment project, and 2 million for the designs for the African Museum project. Unfortunately, all of this capital funding was diverted to support the fight against COVID-19.
Members of Parliament raised pertinent concerns on the ministry's operations and the work being done by the ministry's parastatals, including the Eswatini Tourism Authority and the Eswatini Environment Authority. The minister then requested members of Parliament to approve the ministry's budget for 2021-2022, which stands at 80 million emalangeni, 468,113, with an additional 5.4 million emalangeni for capital projects. For Eswatini TV News, Tinkhundla with Tinkhundla in Parliament.
The Minister of Health, Zinkosi, says during the financial year 2020-2021, the ministry filled 4,328 established posts. The minister said this when the ministry presented the 2020-2021 annual budget performance report before the Ministry of Health's House of Assembly Portfolio Committee.
The Ministry of Health Annual Budget Performance Report for 2020-2021 financial year indicates that 314 posts were not filled in the ministry. Out of the 4,328 posts which were filled, 763 were paramedics, 192 were dental officers, and 1,614 were nurses or midwives, while 1,759 were environmental and other support staff. The Minister of Health, Zinkosi, elaborated on the ministry's performance.
The ministry collected 2,318,957 emalangeni through various hospital tickets against 5,492,934 emalangeni and 54 cents, which was collected in the same period in 2019 to 2020. This represents a decrease of 57.8%. Altogether. The ministry was able to spend 1,642,882,423 against the released amount of 2,128,893,421 under the recurrent budget. This represented an under expenditure of 29%.
Members of the Portfolio Committee applaud the Ministry of Health for the AstraZeneca doses which were received by the country on Thursday. They call upon the Ministry to capacitate members of the public about the vaccine so they will not be reluctant to vaccinate when the time comes. The members complain that the Ministry has been too quiet as there are no promotion items about the vaccine. Minister Nkosi requests the Portfolio Committee to approve the Ministry's budget request for the 2021-2022 financial year, which is 2.7 billion emalangeni for Eswatini TV News Fortune Dlangamandla, Parliament.
Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Simon Zwane, says the arrival of the COVID-19 vaccine does not necessarily mean that those who will vaccinate must then stop adhering to the regulations that have been put in place to curb the spread of the virus, but they must continue to adhere to them until the ministry announces otherwise. Dr. Zwane revealed this during an interview with Eswatini TV in Babane.
Since the COVID-19 vaccine for the prevention of the virus has finally arrived in the country on Thursday this week, which was manufactured by the Oxford Medical University in England and was then dispatched from India, this brings a relief to Eswatini because the rollout will now begin. Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Simon Zwane, says the rollout will begin with health workers next week, and he advises every Eswatini to make sure that they continue adhering to the COVID-19 regulations, even if one has been vaccinated, until the ministry announced that they can stop.
Being vaccinated does not necessarily mean that then it's all systems go. What we need to emphasize is that we, the health authorities in the country, have come out to say to the nation, this is what will help you. Put on your mask, sanitize your hands, social distance. We said that, and we continue to say that.
On the issue of vaccinating children under 18 years, Dr. Zwane says companies manufacturing children's vaccine are already working on manufacturing vaccine fit for children.
Studies are being conducted to come up with an appropriate type of vaccine that can be given to children as well, without any issues. The ones that we have now have only been tested, and you can understand why. They've only been tested to people of older age group from 18 years and above. And this is the reason. We have not seen so much of infections and illnesses amongst children, particularly those below 18 years. So the focus was on saving and protecting the health of the older population, and that is why for now we do not have vaccines that are appropriate for children.
Dr. Zwane further says Eswatini will be notified on how the COVID-19 vaccine will be rolled out. For Eswatini TV News, Zodwa with Mbonga Dube, Babane.
The National Emergency Response Council on HIV and AIDS in Nature says the organization is worried about the new HIV infections amongst women and girls during the partial lockdown period in the country. Nature's head of communications, Tinkhundla, says according to a study conducted by the organization in July last year to date, 6% of women and girls have been infected with HIV. Tinkhundla said this during an interview with Eswatini TV in Babane.
The outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic in March last year has resulted to bringing negative effects to many because of partial lockdowns, which were then started by many countries of the world with the aim of minimizing the spread of the virus. The negative effects included the increase in the number of women and young girls, resulting to them getting new HIV infections because of engaging themselves in unprotected sex. Nature's head of communications, Tinkhundla, says about 6% of women and girls have contracted HIV new infections in the country during the lockdown period.
We can say that the report showed us that by July 2020, there were 6% new HIV infections, and all of these were amongst females in all the age groups. Now, we saw a rise in infections of 13% amongst adolescents between the ages of 15 to 19, and then we saw new infections amongst young women of ages 20 to 24.
Tinkhundla further stated that as an organization, they have come up with programs and strategies to address the issue.
We also have a study that was instituted now to actually just look at how we can counteract these factors, these challenges that the youth is faced with, especially women. And that is the Sitakela Ligusasa study, which now is a way of sort of saying, is an incentive-driven study to say if we give young people incentives are they then going to, stop engaging in intergenerational sex? Are they then going to stop engaging in transactional sex? And indeed, we did discover that it works wonders.
Ngwanyana then appealed to non-governmental organizations as well as members of the public to work together in the fight against HIV. For Eswatini TV News, Zodwa Dlamini with Mbonga Dube, Babane.
In an effort to thank and encourage frontline workers for the role they have played in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, Swazico Medics will be awarding frontline workers, starting with health workers, for the good work they have done during the COVID-19 period. This was confirmed by the director for Swazico Medics, Begani Mlota, during an interview with Eswatini TV in Manzini.
During the difficult times of COVID-19 worldwide, a disease which has resulted in many people losing their lives while others are still trying to recover from the pandemic, health workers have been working tirelessly in order to save many lives of Eswatini during this difficult period, regardless to the fact that even themselves are also in danger of contracting the virus. Therefore, to honor them for doing a great job, Swazico Medics have decided to reward health workers for the great job they rendered to the Swazi nation during this difficult period. Swazico Medics Director Begani Mlota explains how this project will be conducted.
We sat as an office and said, under this project, Project Save a Life, let's just give back, looking at the hard work that was put by these frontline workers in the Kingdom of Eswatini to working very hard every day dealing with COVID-19. First wave, then came second wave.
Mlota further stated that as a company, they wish to reward all frontline workers, but due to financial constraints, they will not honor all of them, but only those who will win during the draw.
Later on, we'll be looking at the forces and those working under companies like Dupes in terms of also awarding them, showing that we recognize that they are there.
The rewards include staying for 2 nights at Sibebe Resort and many other prizes. For Eswatini TV News, Zodwa Dlamini with Mbonga Dube, Manzini.
A very good evening once again. You are still watching Eswatini TV. Now we'll be moving on to our sports news. The Confederations of African Football has allowed the Eswatini Football Association to use the Mavuso Sports Center to host the AFCON qualifiers against Guinea-Bissau to be played on the 26th of March 2021. In a statement issued by the Football Association, the stadium is only allowed to host the Sihlangu game as its ban from hosting international games remains in place.
The Football Association of Eswatini has released a statement announcing that the Sihlangu and Guinea-Bissau game will now be played at the Mavuso Sports Center after the Confederations of African Football decided to lift the ban on using the stadium to host international games because it didn't meet certain requirements, including that the dressing rooms and the field of play were not in the required standard. The game was scheduled to be played outside the country, which was said to be an embarrassment for the country. CAF lifted the ban after an emergency meeting with the Eswatini Football Association on the 8th of this month. The ban is lifted for only this game, and it can only be lifted once the minimum requirements have been met. The Football Association says they greatly welcome the decision from the CAF, and they will now start all the necessary preparations to host such a game in this COVID pandemic. Match officials for this game will be from Rwanda. The game is scheduled for the 26th of this month and will kick off at 3 p.m. Reporting for Eswatini TV Sports News, I am Patizwe Msibi, Mbabane.
Lomahasha Member of Parliament Ndumiso Masimula has asked the Ministry of Sports to do more work in the development of football from grassroots level, including schools. Masimula was speaking when the Ministry of Sports appeared before its portfolio committee in the House of Assembly.
The Minister of Sports appeared before the Sport Portfolio Committee in the House of Assembly to discuss many issues, including this year's budget and activities among the ministry. The Member of Parliament representing Lomahash, Ndumiso Masimula, who is also a member in the Sports Portfolio Committee, says the ministry should do a lot better in the development of football from the grassroots, as he believes currently there is no relationship between school sports and the ministry. Even though talent can come from the schools, and those players can also go on to help the struggling national team.
Good relationship lekhona ku ministry nalaba labadlalisa ibhola etikolweni ngibona ngathi kude kanti kube bekungaba nekuhlangana kusetshenziswana netikolo ngoba kulapho at grassroots level kuze tokhona lo ukuthi uma bakhula bakhona kusita le national team yethu. So uma ngabe tiko belinga foster a relationship na etikolo kuze batokhona ukuthi bangasetakala. Mhlawumbe lokunye lengingakubuta nje ukuthi njengathi ngowe.
The Minister for Sports, Harris Bulunga, asked the committee that he bring some answers in writing. The committee also encouraged the ministers to continue working on the sport policies, as it is the only way they can be able to generate revenues to run the sports in the country and grow sports. Reporting for Eswatini TV Sports News, I am Patizwe Msibi with Linda Dlamini Lubamba.
New CAF President Dr. Patrice Motsepe says he is confident that he will make African football to be amongst the best in the world. Motsepe was speaking after being declared the new president of the Confederations of African Football CAF during its annual general meeting in Morocco.
The Confederations of African Football today had their annual general meeting where, among other things to be discussed, was the election of the new president. Eswatini was also present and represented by the outgoing president, Adam Pomba Mthethwa. After those who wanted to be president agreed to withdraw their standing and support Dr. Patrice Motsepe from South Africa, it was only a formality when he was finally announced as the new president of the association.
The candidate is approved by acclamation, as there is only one calling. Please celebrate the election of the new CAF president through your applause. Thank you.
Making his first remarks, Dr. Patrice Motsepe says he wants to make African football to be among the best in the world.
Let's to thank the CAF Exco. Thank you for the excellent work you're doing. You represent the best of Africa as well as the best that we have, and with you and with every one of the member association presidents, the leadership we have in Africa, the leadership we have of football in every country. It is that leadership that gives me confidence and that inspires me, and I'm absolutely confident working together we will indeed succeed to make African football not just reach the summit but be amongst the best in the world.
Ahmad Yahya from Mauritania, Agustina from Senegal, who will be their vice president, and Jacques from Ivory Coast will be a special advisor to Motsepe. Motsepe will now be expected to stand down from being the president of Mamelodi Sundowns in South Africa. Reporting for Eswatini TV Sports News, I am Patizwe Msibi, and pictures are sourced from CAF TV.
That's all for now. Before we conclude, let's have a look at tonight's headlines. Their Majesties have sent a message of sympathy to President Cyril Ramaphosa, the KwaZulu-Natal monarch and nation, on the passing of King Eswatini. The Minister of Commerce says 2 factory shells will be built at Gamula and Mandambe respectively. The Minister of Tinkhundla officiated the sword cutting ceremony at the sites where Gilgal and Gilongo constituencies will be built. Well, Eswatini, that brings us to the end of our bulletin for the evening. Allow me to leave you now with the weather update from us here at Eswatini TV. Thank you for watching. Good night.
For the little ones. Buy a 3-pack of cuddlesome gentle baby wipes for only $49.99. Why pay more? Life's better with Pep.